back to the smoke-filled room. We are here in a smoke-filled tent this time around. We're in Will County at the Habano Cigar Lounge. They are excellent hosts having us here today as we're in person in Will County, in the heart of working class America, real America, I think some of my Will County people would say. We are here with County Board Chair Judy Ogalla. Thank you, Judy, so much for being here. And a little bit about Judy. You've been on the board since 2012.
Yep.
You've got an extensive history here of serving in the community, working with the Will County Farm Bureau, doing a lot of community work, and recently taking over as the board chair, which we're going to talk about as one of our major topics. So that's going to be a fun thing to talk about. As always, with these in-person smoke-filled rooms, we've got people who are going to be joining us in the room. Later, after this is done recording, we'll all be networking and spending time with each other. If you want to come visit us at a future SFR, I'm not sure where we're going to be next month, probably Schaumburg, I think. So reach out to us. We'd love to have you out with us. As always, I've got my political team, minus Michael Butler, because it's a 4-hour drive for the poor guy, so we didn't make him drive all the way up here. But in Michael's absence, we still have with us Chris, Abby, Matt, John. Thank you guys for joining us and being with us here today. We're going to go right into Will County topics and the juicy one, the fun one. So people who don't understand how county board chairmen are chosen. There are some counties in the state. Talking too much, I got to keep the cigar lit. And by the way, poor Judy had to come all the way here right after a county board meeting. So forgive her, she just desperately needs a drink after living through a county board meeting. So we're just happy she's able to take a second to relax and talk to us. So if you don't know how county board chairmen are chosen, in some counties, they're elected. In some counties, the majority of counties, they're chosen by the county board members. In Will County, the Democrats have a majority on the county board. And so pretty much every time in every county that I've seen, when a party has a majority on the board, they choose a chairman that's from their party. And yet here in Will County, despite the fact that Democrats hold the majority, there is a Republican who holds the county board chairman position or chairperson position. Or what do you guys call it? Chairperson, chairwoman?
Chairman.
Chairman, okay. And that's Judy. So how did that happen? I first want to start with you, Judy. I'm sure there's some things you can say, some things you can't. I don't want to get you in trouble, but it's a fascinating story that I don't think many people know about in politics. So if you can, tell us what you can about how you ended up the county board chairwoman or chairman, despite the fact that Republicans don't have a majority on the board.
So the interesting thing with Will County is we have the county executive form of government. So the county executive is a Democrat. County board is 11 Republican, 11 Democrat. County executive breaks the tie.
Okay.
So that's how they had the majority in the room. So leading up to that time, I'm negotiating with this person who might be the Democrat chair, that person. And then the day of the event comes, one person said she's not going to do it, so we're down to one person.
On the day of?
The day of.
Sheesh.
So we're negotiating back and forth what we want. So this one guy's name, the Democrat, is named Joe, and I'm like, hey, Joe, I want 50% of everything you got, 50% of the chairmanships, and I want to be the vice chair of the executive committee.
Which in a 50-50 split county seems fair.
Correct. 50% of the Forest Preserve, because in Will County, we also serve on the Forest Preserve Board. So I keep saying, I want 50%. He goes, no, Judy, I can't give that to you, I can't give that to you. And I said, no, that's what I want. I said, think of it as a divorce. I want 50% of everything you have. So I never gave up. So we get in the meeting, and first thing we do is adopt the rules. So because we're now 50-50, we don't have a majority and minority, go through the whole rule book, changing everything page by page. So the county executives let me talk. I go page 1, do this change, page 2, we have to vote after everyone. So it's taken a pretty long time to get through it. Next thing I look over and I see Denise Winfrey get up and walk out of the room, and she's like looking at me the whole way, and I'm like, what's up with that? So I figured she had to go to the ladies' room. That's what I assumed. So first vote comes and she's not there, but you often get a cup of coffee, somebody stops you in the hall, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Second vote comes, she's still not back. So I look over at her desk, it's empty. She took everything. So most of the people are brand new board, half the board is new. They sit in the seats in front of me so they can't see behind us. And it's like, there's no way to say, hey, Denise is not in the room, right? But the plan was all along is one of our board members, Katie, was going to jump up, nominate me. That was our plan.
Okay.
So she does that. Democrats all don't even know that Denise is not in the room. So she jumps up, nominates me, and the roll call comes, and no Denise Winfrey. So in the room, all at once, you have excitement, anger, and shock.
Yeah.
Because I'm not expecting to be chair. We thought about it, but what if? And you figure no one's ever going to leave the room when you have this important vote.
Right, yeah.
So that was
of all the votes you're going to cast in the next 2 years, that's the one they tell you not to miss.
that one, and don't be there for the levy.
Yeah.
2 very important days to be there. The rest of the time, you can go. So anyway, that happens. There's just anger in the room, total anger in the room. They're yelling at us, the Democrats, because this happened, and it's just like, oh, well, this is the way it goes.
I mean, it's one of the many things where they're blaming the Republicans for their own failures. It just seems like a trend, right?
Right.
I mean, so it turns out, at the end of the day, there's more to the story of why she left, right? I mean, now you know. You didn't know at the time.
No one
but,
knew, right. So then you find out that she's the president of NACO, which is National Association of County Organizations. She has to catch a plane to go out of town for a NACO conference. And usually that reorganization meeting is not long, but because we had to change so many things in it, and there was compromise, Democrats wanted this change, so I said, all right, I'll do that, you give me this. So there was a lot of things to change. So it took so long, and everyone was surprised, and mostly myself.
And my understanding is that the Democrats took their sweet time taking, group pictures after everybody got sworn in.
They did.
Right, and so in theory, they could have avoided this process entirely if they didn't, slow down the entire process there. And in general, I mean, if they would have noticed that Denise was leaving or knew she was leaving, I mean, they could have just moved to adjourn, because adjourn is always in order. So they could have just moved to adjourn, went back the next day and called it a day. But, it's just a comedy of errors on all fronts, it seems.
I mean, I'd imagine, I don't know Robert's Rules of Orders, but I'd imagine they had options. They had ways they could figure out to either delay or re-find a quorum, or I'm sure there were things they could have done if they were paying attention, but it seems like the good news is they weren't paying attention.
So there isn't real good communication on that side, obviously, if nobody knew that she was leaving to go to catch her plane. And she did end up staying 30 minutes longer.
Okay.
Because her ride was coming to her house, so she stayed 30 minutes longer, but I just went page by page, took my time, not knowing she was leaving, but I just wanted to make sure all the changes got done. So it was interesting.
I mean, I'd imagine while their anger was placed at you and the Republicans, they really should be angry at her.
Oh, so totally. So afterwards, out in the hallway, Joe comes up to me, and he's kind of a big guy. And he comes up and he's like right in my face, like yelling in my face, you lied, you said you were going to support me. I said, he goes, we had a deal. I said, we had a deal till the deal changed. There was no deal once I became chair.
Yeah.
So,
especially considering it wasn't like he was playing ball in the lead up to that point. It wasn't like it was, hey, I'll give you the 50% that you wanted. I'll be fair. I'll be balanced. I mean, this is one of those situations where he wasn't being, you say good government. He wasn't giving Republicans 50% seat at the table.
Right.
And then when it flips, now it's like, wait a second, why aren't you giving me my 50%?
right. So going into the meeting, we did not have an agreement.
Okay.
We did not have a deal because I was asking for everything. Like I said, 50% of the divorce. He didn't want to give it to me. And so going in that day, we never had a deal.
Okay.
So I wasn't really changing my mind or anything. Plus, the dynamics changed, and who wouldn't take advantage of it?
It wasn't a member of your caucus that screwed up.
No.
So
My caucus Katie did exactly what we planned her to do, nominate me for chair.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen this before. I mean, it's funny. It got a little bit of a mention after it happened, but didn't really make the news that it should have. Just because it's fascinating and interesting, let alone.
You know why it didn't make the news? That's because they changed the name from chair, chairman, chairwoman, whatever. It used to be speaker.
Okay.
So they nominate, Steve's a Republican leader, there's a Democrat leader. So Steve gets all the publicity. His name's in the paper. His picture's in the paper. There's nothing about
that might
me.
be for different reasons. Other than the title, but
We could have a Steve Balich hour, right?
We could.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could. So there was confusion by everybody.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, it's funny. We talk about it a lot when we train candidates and we talk about politics. We talk about being nimble and being ready, because no matter how much planning you do, you got to be ready in the moment to make a decision and to have that kind of authority and leadership to say, things have changed, it's time to make an adjustment. One of my favorite quotes is a Dwight Eisenhower quote. He said, I've always found that planning is useless, or plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And it's that idea of being prepared, being ready, and then in politics all the time, things happen and you've got to be ready to deal with it. And I can't tell you the number of times we see in politics where the one side that's ready, when an opportunity pops up, takes advantage, and they're the ones that write history. They're the ones that end up in the history books, and the ones who weren't ready, they're forgotten. So kudos to you and the Republicans for being ready for the opportunity.
It was great. It was a great time.
Chris, any other funny tidbits on this story you want to make sure is out there? Because this is our chance to talk about it.
there are so many tidbits that I can mention about this story because I was aware of the goings on at the time as well, and some of the things I can't say here, but I just want to say is that we always talk about how bad Republican infighting is, the establishment versus the grassroots and all those sort of things. But in this county particularly, the infighting amongst Democrats at the county board and the county Democratic Party is so divisive that it should probably get more play than any sort of Republican infighting that happens anywhere over this country, because it's simply hilarious that all this deal making had to go down because not one person wanted to be, they couldn't decide who wanted to be county board chair, and now we have our county board chair instead.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We see this all the time in politics, and the conversation is always over the fact that, hey, there's so much infighting with Republicans, but ever since, at the state level, ever since Madigan left, and frankly, even at the local level, you see all sorts of infighting and divisions within the Democratic side, and that doesn't get reported on because, of course, the media does tend to lean their direction a bit. But if we're ready to take advantage, there are opportunities even in a blue state. And here we go, in a Collar County, we've got a Republican county board chair, which means there's, and we'll talk about this, some of the great things you're able to get done for the county over the course of the next couple of years. It's the taxpayers of this county who win as a result. Matt, I know you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, Colin, was great. And I think Republicans in Illinois, and especially in purple counties, places where Republicans are in the minority, this is a great example of sometimes a minority that is more unified and put together can be more effective than a disunified majority.
Yep.
So in Lake County and in other counties where we don't have a majority on the county board, we can still learn from things that are happening in Will County, that if we get all of our people and all of our ducks in a row and the Democrats don't, we could really make some headway there. So this encourages me.
Well, and a shout out in Lake County. I remember when Dick Barr was on the board. He paid attention at every meeting, even though the county board chair was a Democrat and she had pushed the Republicans out completely, just off every committee position, every leadership position, which is a story for another day. But the Republicans they had no voice, and yet he made sure he was always there because there was always an opportunity. It seemed once a week because he knew the rules, he knew he'd find that opportunity to get something done for his constituents, something done for taxpayers. And you're right, with an organized and cohesive minority, you can get things done. And Judy and the Republicans here in Will County are proof of that.
Yeah, if you can't beat them on votes, beat them on the rules, and out-politic them. That's what Republicans need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're talking about how Republicans have fared better in this county. I want to talk about that a bit with you. I know Chris will have thoughts. There have been some stories over the last month that inaccurately portray Republicans in this county, saying that Republicans haven't been doing well in Lake County. And your story is obviously one success story, but it's not the only one. Actually, over the last 4 years, as we've seen the suburbs, Republicans struggle really badly in a lot of these suburban counties. Will County is the one county where Republicans have actually done decent. Now, not amazing. We could be doing better, of course. But compared to the surrounding Collar counties, Will is the one where we actually have some wins, where we've come very close in some races. We've won some other races. And so, to me, Will County is a success story. And Republicans here have actually done something right, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on what that might be that maybe some of these other counties could take to heart and could learn from.
I think one of the things is we've had really good candidates, and they have been very active in their communities. So in many different aspects, not just one group. So because they're in many different social groups, they appeal to people in those groups, so they're getting those crossover votes. So they're not just focused on one thing. And I don't really hear a lot of the Republicans, especially like a county, there are no social issues because we don't deal with social issues at the county board.
Yeah.
So we try and stay away from that because I might go to your house and knock and, the wife might be a Democrat, the husband might be a Republican, but I don't know who's always coming to the door. So I try and just tell them why it's a good reason and what we do to represent you. And I typically will say that I'm not owned by anybody. If you ever look at my campaign funds, I don't have a lot of dollars, and my fundraisers are very small, just from my friends. So I'm representing the people, and when I've been approached by some organizations, hey Judy, would you like some campaign? Of course you want campaign donations, but I always say I have a limit as to what I'll take because I'm not going to be beholden to anybody than my residents. And I think most of the Republicans have that. Democrats on the other side, they're owned in Will County.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Interesting. And it seems like it's a different dynamic than what we might see in other counties. What are your thoughts on this, Chris?
So in Will County, I think the big thing is demographics. The demographics of Will County are so much different than, say, DuPage County or Lake County. In Lake County, you have an entire North Shore, big money area that has trended blue over the past, decade or so, especially under Trump, that's, shifted that county to the left. In DuPage County, the whole county's pretty much like that. So, you really have nowhere to go but down in a place like DuPage County. And there they got a lot of infighting, and, I'm sorry, Oliver,
The truth, yeah.
The things aren't going too well in DuPage. But in Will County, we're dealing with a more working class constituency. I mean, Judy will tell you that there is a whole rural area of Will County that takes up half the county's landmass that people don't really think about. And there's solid, hardcore blocks of Republican territory that you can play into. You can play off places like Homer Glen, where we're at right now, Frankfort, New Lenox. These are well-populated areas that are very, very heavily Republican, and these are advantages Will County has that other counties just don't, partially because of infrastructure and just demographics.
Let's talk about that for a second. What we see is a Republican Party that is finally starting to recognize that if we're going to win, we have to win with working class families, the workers of this country. And for people who like or dislike Donald Trump, one of the good things he's done for our party is help us recognize that you need to do well with workers if you're going to do well in elections at all. And we see that play out here in Will County. It's a blue-collar county, it's a working-class county, and Republicans are doing well here, which is, I'll tell you, I've been doing politics long enough to say, that's a recent thing. Republicans typically do poorly in working-class areas. It's only in the last 4 or 6 years we've seen that this growth and this improvement, and so it seems like you guys here in Will County are at the front lines of that. Are you seeing that within what you do here in Will County?
I think so, and one of the things that the Democrats did during their crazy movement when they were anti-funding the police was we were always there to support them. We always feel that the most important thing is the safety of our police officers and making sure they have good equipment and fully funded, and that argument stayed with us. Mm-hmm. So then the Republicans got all the endorsements because of that. So that was a big positive. And if you look at our board, we are a working class. Yeah. My husband's retired 134 electrician. I was a white-collar systems analyst at Panduit and Tinley Park. But everyone else is working and on the board. They aren't just there because they have the funds to just not work.
Yeah, but I do think that's important. What you're describing is something we talk about a lot, is have people representing the people who actually represent the people, who is one of them, who hey, you could go to the doorstep and say, my husband and I were just like you.
Right.
For too often, the Illinois Republican Party, because a lot of people who led our party were more from that country club Republican sort of group, which is more like Lake County, which is where a lot of them came from with Mark Kirk and others. Mm-hmm. And they've tried to remake this party as sort of that model. And what I've argued, and what we've argued, is that this is a large state and a very diverse state. A Republican in Lake County might look different than a Republican in Will County.
Absolutely.
And trying to force this one-size-fits-all, everyone needs to look like Mark Kirk or Bob Dole approach doesn't work, because a voter in Aurora is going to vote different than a voter in Joliet, which is going to vote different than a voter up in Libertyville. And so having this more diverse party is a good thing for us, and I think it's one thing that you guys in Will County can really teach us as a party. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so I just building upon that, I feel like every time I'm out in Will County or I'm talking to candidates in Will County, they seem very genuine people. They seem like they reflect their community very well. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, what I want to see in a candidate is someone who's like a business owner, who looks like me, who does the things that I'm doing. And I think Will County Republicans do that really well. They find leaders to run for office that reflect their community, and I think voters are always going to respond to that. So I think it's something other counties should be looking at doing when they're recruiting their candidates.
Yeah, and even at the state level, recognizing how giant and diverse the state is. 12 million people,
right.
There's no part of the state where it's the same as the rest. We should embrace that diversity instead of forcing this, everyone has to think like me, everyone has to look like me to be part of my party. That just doesn't work. We're all different. Even all 6 of us have unique views on probably every issue.
Right.
And that's a good thing. What were you going to say, John?
Yeah, I was just going to say the point that Abby was making is really important. I mean, for example, the 11th Congressional District goes from Bolingbrook, and it's in Will County, all the way up to, where I live in Boone County. And that's a very vastly different district, from rural farmland to, Naperville down to Bolingbrook. So we need to find candidates who can build coalitions and within these districts and understand that my district's going to be vast and it's going to be unique, and you're going to have to talk to a lot of different groups of voters in order to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of transitions us easily into this next topic, which is how different South suburban politics are. I think it's funny to see, like Chris and Matt especially, when I see them sort of interact, because South suburban politics, Will County, Southern Cook County politics are unique to pretty much the rest of the state, other than maybe Chicago. And so I'm actually going to jump to Chris first on this, just to give us your thoughts on how unique politics are here. Because if you don't do politics in this area, you have no idea. And I love watching people who are like political consultants or staffers who are used to politics in central Illinois or northern Illinois or by the North Shore, and then they come here and try to run campaigns, and you just watch them chasing their tail the whole time. Why is it so different here?
So we were just talking about candidates and candidate quality. You have to understand this is a very blue-collar, working-class area, and as such, the people who we elect to represent us are more often than not blue-collar and very working-class. So we're a little rough around the edges. You know, we're a little more, you know, how do I put this?
So what you're saying, Chris, is that people here would rather have a deep dish pizza or an Italian beef than some quinoa and kale, and maybe they wouldn't wear a red velvet jacket to an event.
Well, no, we would not eat deep dish pizza. We have tavern-style pizza, which is
You guys
real
don't even do
Chicago.
deep dish here?
Well, we have it, but it's not like our go-to. Nobody actually eats deep dish pizza in
real.
Chicago.
That's a real
It's
thing. Yeah.
tourist stuff. I mean, the people on the North Shore think the deep dish pizza is Chicago-style pizza, which isn't true. Anywho, we're more rough around the edges, and as such, our politics is a little more rough around the edges. We talk about cutting deals. We talking about greasing the union, you know, things like that.
It's old school.
It's
It's old school politics.
It's old school politics that has existed for centuries, and part of that's because there has been machines, be they large scale with things like the Cook County Democratic Party as it was back in the day, but even Republicans. I mean, Republicans in this area have been very, you know, machine orientated. Maybe not anymore, but at one time they were very much like that. They had their own little Republican machines, and that traditional politics still lives on today, and it never existed in, say, like Lake County or DuPage County a little bit. But you guys
DuPage had it for a while, but DuPage just sort of fell apart. I mean, that's the difference is, you know, the DuPage County Republican Party was a machine and had that kind of influence and that kind of power, but it's fallen apart. Meanwhile, it seems like Will County has been able to maintain that, and I think part of it is because it is more pocket. It's not one giant organization that was going to fracture, because that's what happened a bit in DuPage. One larger organization that fractured, everyone wanted to be king. Here in Will County and in Southern Cook County, you have different sort of fiefdoms, different groups. They each have a good amount of influence, but what I'm impressed with is you get somebody in DuPage or Lake or even McHenry who says, hey, I want to host an event, I'll get some people out to it. They're going to get 5 people out to it. We do something down here and someone's like, hey, let's do an event, we'll pull it together. They're going to bring 20 or 30 people. They have that capability, which you don't have in a lot of other places in the state, and that's one of the good things about the infrastructure that exists here.
And it's what Colin's describing is what I like to call the municipal enterprise, because it's all these little pockets of, you know, township government, village politics, you know, park district politics in some places where everything matters. Every little vote matters. You want to talk about people who understand local politics? It's in the southwest suburbs, because we know, and some people, they do it for nefarious reasons. They're making some money off the side from it. But we actually understand that every tax levy has a matter. We understand how many jobs are going to go in a budget for a library board or something like that, because there's benefits in some way, shape, or form to somebody here.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
That's why it always That's why it frustrates me when you'll get candidates and they get all caught up in the appeal of like the sexiness of getting someone from DC or Tennessee or Florida, or having people run your campaign from people who have no clue what's actually going on in the district that they're running in. Even in Lake County, you go to Antioch, and that's totally different than if you go 20 minutes south and you go to Lake Zurich, which is way different than if you go 20 minutes east and then you go to Lake Forest. And it's like, how can people from outside the state and outside the counties effectively run campaigns if they don't even know anyone that's in there?
That's true. I also want to know, by the way, considering I know you're actually a fairly slow driver, despite the fact that you've got a Mustang, how you get from Antioch to Lake Zurich in 20 minutes. That's kind of impressive, especially without Route 53. So
depends what kind of music is playing. The right music playing, you know, the top's down. You could go 80 miles an hour. If there's any cops here, I don't really go 80 miles an hour.
someone's going to be waiting for Matt outside to make their ticket quota. Judy, I wanted to go to something with you on an issue. I hear a lot about the Peotone Airport, and I'm a northerner. Tell me why I and other people who don't live maybe in that region around that area, why we should care about the Peotone Airport and why it's important. Why is this something we should be paying attention to?
I think the reason it should be important to everybody, it shows that when a government, politicians push an issue that the market doesn't want, it doesn't happen. So that's how I became involved with politics. I was part of a group called stand, which is Shut This Airport Nightmare Down. I was the vice president for 12 years.
I like that. Okay.
Like that, Shut This Airport Nightmare Down. And we fought against the airport for so many years, big community group, and we have continued to fight. That is a common issue. I'll still, when I go door to door, they'll say, hey, well, how do you feel on the airport? It's still an issue out by us. And it was nothing more than a land grab. And the state used really bad tactics of intimidation to our elderly, who a lot of elderly own farms, and they'd go there and knock and say, hey, we're here to inspect your property today. So when they came to my house, I said, you know, here's the thing. I'm cleaning my husband's guns today, and I'm not good at it, so I don't think you really want to be around me.
Nice.
So, you know, they never really gave me a hard time. But we do live
I feel
on...
like you laid the groundwork pretty well. On
Yeah,
that.
that was for sure. And so my husband and I kind of live on an island. We live on a farm that's surrounded by state-owned property.
Okay.
But it just shows that why people should be involved and think about it, because if it happens to me, it can happen to you.
Well, I'm always amazed, you know, as I travel the country with some of the trainings that I do around the country, and you talk to people, it's amazing how you hear one narrative sort of in the press or from government, and you hear a different narrative locally. I remember spending a couple weeks in Alaska doing some political work, and every single person I talked to wanted ANWR, they wanted the Arctic drilling, and yet everything I heard down here in the lower 48 was, it's so horrible, nobody wants it. And then I saw a poll that something like 80–90% of Alaskans actually wanted it, and I said, it's their state, it's their land. If it's something they want, why are we following this sort of government-led narrative? Now, I don't care where people stand on drilling. That's not the point of this. It's just on something like that or something like the Peotone Airport, I would care what the people who live there think versus what some government bureaucrats in Springfield or Chicago tell me what I should think. I want to know what you guys think who live in that area. So I think it is a good lesson.
Yeah, and in 2015, when Larry Walsh Sr. was the county executive at that time, we get a call from Springfield that he's down there and he's pushing this Senate Bill 20, and Senate Bill 20 was legislation that gave the powers and tax revenue and anything that might be generated from an airport in Peotone, which is Will County, to Cook County. So they did that, and our current county executive voted for that.
Interesting. So
So the person who's going to be running, Chuck Mayer, against her, that's a key thing. She voted for that, and she's done nothing to rectify it. So it's dangerous when a certain party has too much power, which we see in Springfield. They feel they're untouchable. And I hope that we make a big difference this next election where we can pick off a couple people, because we need change. Democrats need change because they're not being represented, because their vote, they can count on it, so they don't have to do anything for you.
Well, I think also you look at like the Democratic Party, we talk about this a lot, when you've got a working class county like Will County, the Democratic Party does not represent the citizens of this county with how far left progressive in the state they've gotten. And they're chasing that far left progressive vote and leaving behind working class families in this county. John, it seems like you got some thoughts.
Yeah, you know, because the Peotone Airport isn't just, you know, a Will County issue. It's really a suburban issue, because I live all the way up by Rockford, and, you know, if they're to build an airport in Peotone, that's going to probably dramatically impact the Rockford Airport, where they've been spending millions of dollars investing in it to build a UPS center, Amazon, you know. Rockford's really become a hub, and, you know, rather
They're talking about changing that Stellantis plant into like an Amazon distribution center. I'd imagine if the airport sees less traffic, that's going to screw that whole concept up.
Yeah, you know, it's going to have a, you know, northern Illinois impact, where rather than building a new airport in Peotone, you could continue to invest in the Rockford Airport, continue to expand it. There's plenty of land around that, and it's not like, you know, we're far away either. You know, we're only an hour and 15 from downtown Chicago. You have I-90 right by the airport that makes it accessible. So, you know, building Peotone isn't just a Will County issue. It's going to have negative impacts on the surrounding communities.
Interesting. You mentioned a name, and we've got a lot of people around the state who are influencers on the Republican side. Seems like you're going to have a pretty hot countywide issue in this county. You mentioned Chuck, who's in the room. You want to give his name again so people know to watch this race?
Yep, Chuck Mayer is running for county executive.
Okay.
He was sat on the board with me, on the county board with me, and he was our Republican whip, I think? Majority leader. We had majority, that's right. Not Republican at the time. We had majority at that time. That was really nice. Yeah, the world's different now. So.
But we've talked about this a lot, how these key races at the county level tend to have a bigger impact on politics than any of the big races. And everyone focuses on governor and Congress. But part of the reason we're in the position we are, let's talk about Matt in Lake County, is a lack of focus on these local races that have a huge impact. Judicial races, these have a big impact. And yet people focus on the big, the sexy races. And a county executive race in Will County could determine the future of this county for the next 10 to 20 years. That's a massive deal. We should be focused on that more than some of these other races. Let DC worry about Congress. They've got millions of dollars. We should be hyper-focused on these county races, these local races, where really the big impact is made. So I'm glad you said that name. We should be watching that race.
Definitely. Whenever I'm talking with people, because they know I'm a political nerd, and they'll say, "Oh, what do you think about what's happening nationally? What do you think about who's going to be the next president?" And I'm like, honestly, I don't really care. I care about who's going to be my next elected state representative. I care about who my county board member is. And they say, "What's a county board member?" And then they start asking questions like that. But those are the conversations that Republicans need to be having.
Yep.
Is that when you get your ballot, turn it upside down, and those ones that are on the bottom, when you turn it upside down, they're on the top. Those are the races. Some people don't know when you flip it upside down, it flips it. But it's the races.
You also have to know then how to read the names upside down and backwards.
Don't actually flip it upside down.
You have
just,
to use
just
a
start at the
mirror
bottom.
to figure out what each name is.
Start at
What's
the
an
bottom.
R look like if it's upside down?
But anyway,
So there's
it's those that make the most difference. It's the county board.
Yeah.
So
Well, reading is hard, right?
Exactly.
So to interrupt us, we have this running joke that sometimes Dre has really brilliant points, and then he follows that up with something immediately that sounds really dumb, and I feel like that was like a great. Yes.
We always rely on at least one nugget of wisdom from Matt, so I think we got that. And the
Yes.
point is a valid one. These races make a huge impact, and we get too focused on the bigger races. So speaking of the things that actually matter, I mentioned earlier, I wanted to bring this up. I was fascinated earlier this year. There was a story about how goats were loose in the city of Chicago. And I almost did a video just on that because it was just fascinating to me how people, when they picture politics, they picture the West Wing if you're older and you watched that show back in the day, or nowadays there's other political shows that sort of dramatize what it's like to be in politics. And you know what it's actually like to serve in local government, and you've dealt with it in the last week because there was a wallaby missing here in Will County, a wallaby of all things, a little miniature kangaroo missing in Will County. Just one of the funniest stories I've read in a long time, and that's what it's like serving in local government. You're not dealing with these big, huge, earth-shattering issues most of the time. It's local service dealing with local issues, sometimes as crazy as a tiny little kangaroo hopping around the county.
All around, yeah. So it was all over Facebook, the Moni page that I'm on, that I'm part of, and looking for Rupert because where was he? And nobody knew that she even had a Rupert in the
So
area.
we're crowdsourcing how to find our missing fighter jets, and now we're crowdsourcing how to find missing wallabies.
Right, exactly. So that was glad everyone was happy he was found, and he's safe home, so that's a good thing.
Well, there was a bull missing up in Burlington Hills a couple weeks ago, which is a really, really, really nice community. And everyone was freaking out about this missing bull, and am I going to find it in my backyard? It's just funny how that's the kind of thing you tend to deal with when serving in local government. It doesn't usually the bigger shattering things. Anyways, I just had some fun with that. All right, let's move on because this week is the first week of no cash bail in Illinois. So we got to talk about it. And there's going to be all sorts of stories about it. The left-leaning political blogs and media are going to tell you how everything is great, everything's working perfectly. But as we've talked about in previous weeks, there are risks associated with what's happening here, and we're seeing it kind of play out. The very first case in Cook County that came up was a woman who tased 4 Chicago police officers, and she was let right back out on the streets because Kim Foxx decided she didn't want to try to have her detained. And we've seen stories in some of these other counties where people who probably shouldn't be back out in the streets are right back out in the streets. Michael, if he was with us, I know he shared a story about something he saw in Effingham, was it? Where 20 minutes later, someone was rearrested after being let out because they weren't detained. We're seeing the cracks and the flaws in this strategy. And it's things that I know a lot of people have been talking about how these, you can say on paper the law makes sense. And if you just read the law, I could see people who could make an argument for, okay, there might be some decent aspects of this. But it's backed by the people who put it in, the people who are pushing it, are people who want to be, they're pro-criminal. They want to put criminals back in the streets. They want to empty the jails. So even if they can argue about certain pieces of the law, we know the intentions of those behind it. The Kim Foxes of the world who are on the side of criminals over victims. And we're seeing that play out in some of these cases. So I'm curious if you have some thoughts, just you're seeing it happen in real time in Will County. I know we've got some stories to share on our side, but anything you've seen as this is starting to come up, and I know it's a concern for families.
So it's a concern for everyone because of the fact that we have so many people that are sitting in jail right now being held because the judges thought that they should be held, right? So everyone is worried, and out by us, people are coming down I-57 and I-80, and they're doing these break-ins all the time. So take that and extrapolate it. They run back to Cook County. So it's a big concern for everyone because it's What's really going to happen? And we don't know. So I talked with the state's attorney, assistant state's attorney, is like, well, what's going to happen is we're on 90 days now. So the first 90 days, they got to prove that this person needs to be held. And then the very next day, it's another group of 90 days and another group of 90 days. So it's really going to make everybody work extra hard to try and make their points. And I think that we're going to see, probably, I would expect people will be more encouraged to do things because they think they're going to get off and not be held accountable.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say to your point, so like in DuPage, bail hearings in the morning, these hearings used to take 20 minutes out of the day for 20 defendants. And now they're taking pretty much all day because, like, again, like you're saying, people are working extra hard to make their point and prove why they should or shouldn't be in jail. So it's just going to create a backlog, I think, and a logistical problem, which, like, we don't really need help making government less efficient. Like, that's already a problem. So just logistical challenges, I think, are going to be something to watch.
Yeah.
Right. Something that we'll see, not only that, without having the bail money, that puts a strain on the jail system and the court system because
Which
they
of
don't
course
have
government, the state government, when they passed this, didn't replace that funding for the
They did
counties.
not.
Yeah, of course.
They did not replace anything. And that's
Figure
how they
this out.
operate.
Here's a massive change, a big additional cost. You're going to have less money to do it, and you're on your own. Good luck.
Right.
Yeah,
That's why I think
gotta love
local
Springfield.
government's more important because when we're passing ordinances, we're looking more at what's it really going to do.
Yep.
In the state, I think they just get a group of people who lobby for something and they pass it without thinking about what's going to happen.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
don't care.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, State Representative Jeff Keicher was on Fox and Friends this morning actually talking about the Safety Act, and he pointed out one of the most important things of it is it's on the prosecutors now to advocate why these people should be detained, and it's why it makes these state's attorneys' races in 2024 so important, because if you're going to have a state's attorney like Kim Foxx or the person who's going to be replacing her going to be out advocating that we should release these people, then that's going to create more of a problem where, out in Southern Illinois and Western Illinois, you have these Republican state's attorneys, they're going to be advocating that people should be detained if they're a threat to the community. It's what makes these races so important, something that we should really be paying attention to as a party.
It does seem like it sort of takes away a little of that power from judges. I'm not a judge, so I'm kind of looking at a friend in the room who's a judge, see if he gives me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if I'm wrong on this. But it does seem to take away a little bit of their authority, where under the previous system, they at least had a little bit more leeway to say, yeah, this person shouldn't be out on the streets. But now it's on the prosecutors. So if you're in Cook County, if you're a Cook County judge, which we've elected a bunch of judges in Cook County, and if you're in Cook County and you've got Kim Foxx and her prosecutors came in and said, we don't want to fight this, just let them out, the judge can't just say, well, I'm going to unilaterally say, forget the prosecutor, I decide they shouldn't go out there. So I feel like the people who should be making these decisions, which are our judges, it sort of takes the decision off of their hands. And now if you've got a bad prosecutor like Cook County or Lake County, you're going to see more of these criminals back out on the streets. And these stories are already starting to pop up where they're committing crimes yet again. We saw this during the Black Lives Matter protests where people would commit a crime in Cook County, they'd be back on the streets by that night, and by the next morning they're at the next riot committing another crime. I mean, you see this cycle continue, and there are certain people who just shouldn't be on the streets. And I think if you're in a county that doesn't have a good prosecutor, you're going to struggle with it.
And a lot of the time, it's not even the fault of the individual ASA who's on the case. These state's attorneys' offices have mandates from whoever this elected state's attorney is to say, hey, you're either going to put these people in jail or you're not. I mean, that was the big thing about Chicago. Chicago effectively eliminated cash bail like 4 years ago or something. Because Kim Foxx told her state's attorneys, hey, you're not going to put anybody else in jail under like $500 over $500 theft. Even though the law says otherwise, you're just not going to do it anymore. And they can't do anything about it because they can lose their job if they say otherwise.
Well, there's a mayor who's a good friend of mine who his community is partially in Cook County, partially in Will County. And he told me a story a couple of years ago that blew my mind where a lot of times when they have criminals that they detain and pull them in, the criminals will ask, was I on the Will County side or the Cook County side? Because they knew if they were on the Will County side, they might be held responsible for their crimes. If they were on the Cook County side, they'd be fine. And there was a story he told of one time where they thought they were on the Cook County side, but they were caught on the Will County side, and they were just expletive, because they knew they were screwed. And that's just, you shouldn't have that sort of the complete differentiation in justice because you passed one county line from one county to the other. There's going to be some problems here as it rolls out, and the proponents want to say it's all because of the bill itself, the law itself. To me, it's the intention behind it, which is our next topic, is sort of that intention of the people behind this. There's a story of the last week about the governor's prisoner release board, where for the last couple of years, Republicans down in Springfield have been raising the profile of the Prisoner Release Board, because for years they were accepting paroles for people who had committed heinous crimes and putting them back on the streets. Republicans made a big beef about it. They were able to get some more reasonable people on that board. Well, now leftists are unhappy because that board is acting more reasonably, and they're not letting out those murderers back on the streets, those rapists on the streets, those wife beaters back on the streets. And so leftists are unhappy, and I think that speaks to what we're talking about here with no cash bail and the agenda. If you're trying to say we want a fairer system, and that's actually your goal, then let's have a conversation about criminal justice reform. I know many Republicans who are on board with common sense criminal justice reform, but the people behind this, that's not their end goal, and they've made it clear. The fact that they came out and said that they're unhappy that the governor's prisoner release board isn't letting these people back on the streets tells me it's not about criminal justice, it's about emptying the jails and putting people back on the streets. And so again, you see the intentions of the people behind us tell us what it is they're trying to accomplish, which is why, no, we're not going to support this, because you might have some decent aspects that you want to talk about, but we know what your goals are. Any thoughts on that, or is that just a Colin rant?
I think it's an accurate rant because, if we actually wanted to have discussions about, criminal justice reform, we could have conversations about things such as mandatory minimums or stuff like that. But that's not the way we're having this conversation, But they want to, and people want to blame the law. Well, they're the ones who wrote the law.
Yeah.
If they wanted a different outcome, you could have wrote it in a manner that would have prevented this situation from happening. But I think the important thing is that as Republicans, we remember when, a story like Effingham happens. We remember when these things happen to remind voters, in 2024, this is what happens when you have Democrats in office writing these laws in Springfield. Your state representative voted to let this happen. Your state's attorney is letting this take place. This is going to be a really big issue for Republicans in 2024, and we just need to make sure we frame it right so that voters understand its importance.
Yeah, and to your point, when we've polled criminal justice reform, it's not just Democrats who like the idea of it. It's Republicans, it's independents. And we're all on board with that concept. Let's come to the table, and this is where good government wins out. Let's come to the table and say there are good things you need to accomplish. Let's do that. But that's not what happened here. There were a lot of good prosecutors. There were a lot of good police officers and sheriffs who wanted to be in the room in this and said, hey, if this is your goal, let's work on it. But then it became clear that wasn't the goal. And so they weren't allowed even in the room to be part of that conversation. And now we're seeing the end result of one-party rule where it isn't good government and it's the people of the state who lose out.
Absolutely. Every time. And, I just hope that with what's going on, that the average person who may not be political, a lot of independents out there, are realizing where the left is going and understanding that's not who they are. Yeah. And hopefully they just cast their votes for the Republican side, and we bring more realistic views that most people seem to have.
Well, yeah, and when we pull that, what's amazing is across the country, what we see is voters are with Republicans on the issues. Right now, they just don't like our brand and they don't like some of our personalities. But to me, that's a heartening sign. If they're with us on a lot of the things we're talking about, okay, maybe you don't like our candidate for president, or maybe you don't like the brand of the Republican Party right now, but that's all fixable if you're with us on everything else. And what we're seeing on 8 of the top 10 issues, that the voters are with us. Independents are with us, moderates, even soft Democrats, Reagan Democrats, they're still out there. They just don't happen to like some of the personalities, but that time will pass. And then now we can point to the fact that, hey, listen, you like the way we lead, you like the way we govern, come back home, let's do this, because we represent you. While the Democratic Party moves further and further left, they don't represent you anymore as the working families of this state and of this country. Speaking of violence, one thing I'm going to get on a soapbox for a second. You guys can join me or not join me. But last couple weeks, I've been hearing story after story of threats being called in, bomb threats to libraries. I understand right now libraries are a political hot button topic, and I'm not going to get into that. But what I am going to get into is stop using violence to make your political points. I don't care if you think you're right. I don't care if you are right. We're better than that. So I don't know who's behind putting these bomb threats into libraries. Whether you like libraries or you don't like libraries, you don't need to use violence to make your political points. So that's just my soapbox. If anyone wants to join in or share, you can. Otherwise, we'll move to the next topic. But just for those who watch this, for those who, if we have any influence out there at all, please. We talked about this early in the year. We're in Danville. People who were against an abortion clinic rammed a car into the abortion clinic and tried to burn the whole thing down. We're right on the issue, so stop resorting to violence, because the moment you do that, you lose the public. So even if you are right, we lose on our issues when you resort to violence. Stop it. And we have a video. I did a whole video on this earlier in the year. Lane's going to put it in the comment section of this YouTube. So I encourage you to go watch that. Anyways, if you have thoughts on this.
So the only thing I was going to say, just being on the county board, when an issue comes up that the Democrats don't like, instead of having a conversation, bringing up points of why something is wrong and why we should not vote that way, they get angry right away. They get angry right away. They start throwing you under the bus. They stomp their feet. They throw down their stuff. They walk out of the room. It's really crazy. We have one woman who's the Democrat leader, and she doesn't believe that prayer should be in part of the county board. We've always done it at our county board meetings. That's just something we've done. I think it's good. It rounds you, brings you back to where you need to be. And the pastor always gives you a good message of do the job for the people.
Yeah.
Remember why you're here. And
I'm sure you have like a variety of faiths represented by those pastors.
All the time.
Yeah.
Everybody brings in a different variety.
Yeah.
And so every month she leaves because she doesn't believe in it. Today, so what they do so we alternate. 1 month the Republicans have it, 1 month the Democrats bring in somebody. Well, the Democrats don't believe, so they have a moment of silence. It was strictly a moment of silence. Now that week we might have had a murder, we might have had some earthquake or something where you could say, let's have a moment of silence to keep the people who were in the hurricane and are, lost their homes and such. But they do nothing, it's just a moment of silence. But the funny, ironic thing today is she stayed in the room because one of her Democratic members had a pastor come in.
Huh, okay.
So she's just like a hypocrite all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, again, it's what are your intentions? If your intention is to say, hey, it's not just one faith, we represent people of all faiths, and even those of no faith, then as long as you guys are bringing a rotation of different faiths in those pastors, then what's the problem?
Right.
But if you have a problem with faith in general, that's when you cause a big beef and leave. And we're seeing that more and more, probably more left of center than right of center, where it's sort of just this hatred of faith in general, let alone one specific faith. So,
Right.
But I think if we resort to, and even anger, let alone violence, we can solve these problems. Let's come to the table. Let's come together. And kind of like you guys, where it's so split, it's so evenly split. This is the model of good government. If you could come together and sit down at the table, but if your first reaction on every issue is to get angry, that's never going to happen.
Right, absolutely.
All right, last topic here. I'm going to pass it over to Abby. Mental health boards, which people don't know a lot about mental health boards, but it is in the news right now, and we're seeing it all across the state. But a lot in this region going up towards us.
Yeah.
And I know, Abby, you actually serve on a mental health board, so you've got a good perspective on this.
So,
Give us what's going on.
Yeah, so before I say anything, I'll just want to say this does not represent the opinions of my board. This is just me talking. So in DuPage, this issue hit probably in 2021, specifically in Milton Township, and I know Kane County as well. It's, we have actually a county mental health board, but now they're looking at putting them at townships, at township level to help serve that need of people that aren't getting served at the county. But one of the controversies that's really come up is a part of the referendums when they're on the ballot. Sometimes the language that needs to be included to tell taxpayers how much this is going to cost them is not really in those referendums. So some of the boards were able to get that rectified in Springfield, but some of these other boards in Cook County and all over don't have that language. So it's kind of up in the balance. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. I also know it's kind of a controversial, divided issue for Republicans on how they should view mental health boards as well. So
There's some who support it, some who don't.
yeah, so it's a tax thing. So I think me included, I think we all believe that mental health is very important and that people who are not getting that care should be getting that care. But as Republicans, we're always a steward of our taxpayers, and some feel very, very strongly that this isn't an extra layer of government that's taxing us more, so we shouldn't be in favor of it. But a lot of times, I think while we're right on that point, I think it often makes us look like we're insensitive to some of these mental health issues. So it kind of puts us in a weird situation, and you get both sides, but it's something I think we could do better on.
Well, no, you guys have faced it in Will County, right?
We have. It just passed in the last referendum. And the referendum question itself was just said, hey, would you support a tax increase of not more than 0.05% to help people with mental health, behavioral health, disabilities and such? So the average person doesn't know what they're reading, and they say, yeah, I'd like to help those people. They didn't understand Will County has a very robust health department that provides mental health and behavioral health. We just did a whole new ensuite upgrade of our behavioral health, so there's little office rooms so that it's more personal. You're not in a large area. So we've just upgraded that. So that's what happened, and of course it became very political. There's not one Republican that sits on that appointed board.
Interesting.
Not one. And we're looking at a possible $10 million proposal for the mental health board.
So and that was a huge controversy in our
Huge.
township. Is that when on the referendum it said it's we could levy from this up to this. So there really was no like, okay, this is how much you are going to be taxed. It could
So
be
it wasn't as controlled or structured,
correct,
maybe?
and they ended up levying the maximum amount, which obviously made some people very, very upset. So it's like, again, like it needs to be done, but if you don't know how much you're paying for this, it creates, or if it's a duplicated service, like
Duplicated service,
Well,
exactly.
exactly.
I think to me the lesson here is to pay more attention to this, because I don't know any average voter who pays attention to mental health boards just in general, but clearly there's an impact here that you're talking about tax dollars, you're talking about a real world impact from the boards themselves, and people should be paying more attention to this. I'm curious, we got a friend in the room who brought this to our attention. Any thoughts you have? You want to sneak around here? We haven't done this before. Lane might kill me for doing this, but John's got a mic you could grab. What should people be paying attention to on these mental health boards? There we go. John's on camera.
Hello. Thank you. Well, the Chicago Tribune reported this late last month, story by Rob McCoppin. And for the county and for county mental health boards, you have options. And if there's an option if it has to go to a property tax, or does it make more sense to go to a sales tax? So that is one area where counties have some flexibility. It's going to take some involvement with the leadership and everyone working together. But for instance, Winnebago County has a sales tax for mental health. They have a mental health board, but they collect it through a sales tax.
Interesting.
Last I had heard, they were projected to collect about $18 million this year with a 1 penny sales tax. And Will County is even larger than, Will County is the largest 708 mental health board at the county level. It's just under 700,000 population. So there are options that are available, because right now it's hanging on a thread of who's going to enforce PTEL, because PTEL, the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. The county clerks, and what's happened to us in Kane County, that county clerk, as the tax extension officer, put a stop on our mental health board in Dundee Township along with Elgin Township, because we didn't ask the PTEL questions. And there was case law, and the state's attorney, who was a Democrat, and the county clerk, who was a Republican, worked together and saying, you have to follow the law.
Huh. So there are options here, I think, is what I'm hearing. And if people paid more attention and, like we're talking about with good government, sat down and said, how do we do this the best way for taxpayers and for those people that these boards can serve? There are solutions out there, maybe not to go to just strictly to let's pay for this through extra tax dollars at least.
Correct.
Yeah.
And good government will work here, and now's the time to have the conversations, because decisions will be made next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks. I'm glad, John, thanks for jumping in. And, all right, we got somebody in the audience. What are we asking the wrong question on?
You need to ask the question, what are they planning to spend the money on that they're not already having the money
Right.
to spend for?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a point that Judy was making a bit, right? If this money is already being spent, what are you going to spend this money on through the 708 board or through the mental health board? It's follow the money, right? Pay attention to where the money's coming from, where it's being spent.
When these guys get money,
You want, come on up.
Come on up.
We're just breaking all the rules, making Lane's job impossible.
Can we go to Will County
All
every
right,
week? This is great, man. Yeah, I love this. Yeah.
Well, that's what government
It's
is.
anarchy
You
in the
you
streets.
change the rules when it's ready to be changed.
And he's
in
tall
your
too,
court.
so poor can't move my
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. So the idea, okay, so just a little background. All right. I had sat on the Professional Counselor Licensure Board. I helped write the legislation that put in the LCPC legislation to license counselors here in the state of Illinois. And mental health has been something that I've worked on for a long, long time. We have a lot of things going on in mental health throughout the county. But until you sit down and really find out what services are being provided, what services are needed, because we have a bunch of schools that already are doing a lot of stuff for our kids, which is where a lot of the mental health issues are right now when you start taking a look at adolescents and our kids and stuff. But what happens is when you give government money, they go spend it.
Yep.
And so they will
And they're
go in,
incentivized to spend it.
and they are incentivized to spend it. So they will find a way to spend $10 million, whether it's just going out and doing a presentation, and they're doing the same presentation that somebody else did or could have done for no money at all.
Yep.
And they're using that as a way to spend down the tax dollars that they have collected.
Interesting.
So
No, that's a great point because in the Milton Township Board, they had like a basic structure, but it was really up to those appointed to that board to decide how they were going to use that money. So luckily in Milton Township, it's a fairly Republican township, and they are being responsible with the money. We are being responsible with the money. But like, say if that was a different community, there's really you're sort
Right.
of making up these rules, and that creates a problem, I think.
Yeah, and
how
another
many
layer
people
of
on
government.
and how many people on that board actually have mental health experience?
Correct. I mean,
How many? I mean, with all the people, I would love to know how many people that are current executive appointed to this board that actually have mental health experience and that have gone out and done a total assessment before we even put this thing in of what the mental health issues are in the county.
So I can tell you, none of them. None of them.
Wow, that surprises me because a lot of boards, if you put a board together, your board should actually have dynamics on it. You should identify the
Right.
kind of people and
It sounds like
professionals
good
that you want to be on
government,
there.
common sense.
Common sense
Yeah,
government, that
yeah,
would be nice. I
yeah.
mean, maybe have at least 2 or 3 people that are actually mental health professionals that aren't involved in politics, that are just mental health professionals that are involved
And
throughout the county.
we had people like that apply.
Oh, and they didn't get appointed?
They didn't get appointed.
It's so surprising.
You see the shock on my face?
All right, we got to keep moving on the agenda.
Okay,
So-
thank you. So thank you very much for
Yeah.
allowing
No, I'm
me
glad.
to talk.
Thanks, Chuck. So, I mean, listen, I think the point that we're hearing here, the major thing, and we're winding down here, we got a few more minutes. The major point here is when you look at how, we talk about this a lot in these podcasts that we do, sometimes good government doesn't match up with good politics. And so it's great politics to say we want to invest in mental health, and no one
Right.
disagrees with that concept. But when you're talking about an extra layer of bureaucracy, an extra layer of government, more tax dollars, more public funds being spent, there should be a conversation over, is this already being done? Is there a better way to do this? Is there a more efficient way to do this?
And their
we all
board's
agree with,
unaccountable. Who are they accountable
Yep,
to? They're
yep.
appointed.
yep, that's accountable to actually to
They're
the
not
people.
accountable to anybody.
All right, close us down on this topic, Matt.
Yeah, so I think this is a great conversation. However, we already lost most of the voters 10 minutes ago when we first even
Well, our
started
audience
talking
isn't
about
voters, so that's
no,
okay.
No, I know. I'm saying when Republicans try and communicate this, what voters see is they see Democrats support the mental health board, Republicans are against the mental health board. And what does that equivalent to them in their mind? Republicans are against mental health,
Republicans don't care.
and
Right.
Democrats do.
What's
So the political strategist to me would say, whatever we do, whatever solutions that we do come up with as Republicans for how to tackle this mental health issue, we need to be able to effectively communicate that and message that to voters so we don't lose them in the minutia of the conversation.
Well, I think that's the point, right? Good government versus good politics. We're focused on good government, but ultimately we come off as not caring when this issue comes up because we say, no, it's already being done. And then there's a shooting and we say hopes and prayers, thoughts and prayers, it's a mental health issue. And then they say, well, but you could have done something about the mental health issue if you'd have supported the mental health board. So we've got to show that we care, that we actually want to do something about this. All right, we are, we got to get in our Illinois campaign updates. So we're going to do our rapid fire, quick Illinois campaign updates to close. The room's getting full of people who just want to smoke and hang out. They don't want to listen to us keep talking. So hopefully 5 minutes. Let's cover these topics,
Okay.
maybe a few more than that. But we're going to
Rapid
go through
fire.
some of these. We'll do rapid fire. First campaign update I want to give is House District 45.
Oh, that's
It's a big one.
Yes.
And what we're going to start doing, poor Lane keeps having to do more and more work. We're going to pull up these maps in post. So if you're watching this on the podcast, you'll see a map of the district that we're talking about. Because we say House District 45, we know what we're talking about. The average person may
Right.
not. So we're going to bring up those maps so you can see. But House District 45 was a great pickup opportunity for Republicans this cycle because we never should have lost it last cycle. And everyone was looking at it as a great pickup opportunity. Well, the incumbent Democrat, Jenn Ladisch-Douglass, is now retiring and not running. So it was a decent, good opportunity for us to pick up a seat in Springfield before she was retiring. Now it's an open seat, and that district, I see it as an R3 without the
Yeah.
incumbent in it. There's a great opportunity for us. What are you hearing?
Man, I would be so mad if I were the Democrats right now. They spent about $500,000 to get her in office and unseat Deanne Mazzocchi, who formerly represented that district. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to pick up a seat. Unfortunately, we have not yet recruited a candidate,
no.
which is, so I'm hoping that now that
And
the
petitions are already being passed.
Yes, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, DuPage
Yeah.
County, please
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
So
And this is probably one of our top 3 pickup opportunities
correct.
in the legislature.
And just so you know, it's East Elmhurst, Oak
They'll-
Brook
they'll
area.
see the map. It's
They'll
there.
see the map. Yeah. So I think this is an excellent opportunity that we need to take advantage of. So Hopefully we get a candidate that comes out of the woodwork here pretty soon, and we can pick that seat.
I
back
know a
up.
lot of people are trying to find somebody. There's a lot of
Yes.
work going into it, but so far, no results.
There's a lot of people that says, "Oh, I'm interested. I'm interested," and it's like no one's pulling the trigger. So hopefully we get someone to pull the trigger soon.
We got 2 months before filing deadline. There's not a lot of time.
Yeah, your lips to God's ears.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
All right, next one here. Let's talk about House District 99 because we have yet another Republican retiring. Randi Frese is not running for re-election. This is, I can't even count now, the number of Republicans in the legislature who are calling it quits. Obviously, they've been quite frustrated. This is a very Republican district, so the whole race is going to be in the primary, but it's yet another retirement from a established, experienced Republican legislature, which is a scary trend. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, that's going to be a pretty crowded primary. You know, that district includes, Jacksonville, Illinois, Adams County, which is where Quincy is. So it's going to be another one of these, large downstate districts where it's going to be a regional battle. If you get a couple candidates in from Quincy and Adams County and one from Jacksonville, that's going to benefit the candidate from Jacksonville. So, we'll see who makes the ballot because obviously we're in a shortened petition period now. So, serious candidates are really going to have to start working to make sure they get the signatures needed.
Yeah. Next district let's talk about is our friend Terri Bryant in Senate District 58. We've done some things with her. She now has a primary challenger. I know our buddy Michael would love to be here to be talking about this. I have a feeling he'll have some thoughts next week. In the meantime, he shared some thoughts with you guys that he wants to pass along, this Wes Kash. And by the way, when I saw Wes Kash come up, I was racking my brain. I know this name. I know this name. I know this name. And then I figured out who it was. I'm thinking of Wes Kath, who's a farmhand with the Chicago White Sox in their minor league system who was just drafted. But I kept seeing Wes Kash, and I'm like, why do I know that name? I was Googling it. I was looking through my emails. I'm like, I know this person, and I don't. I just happen to know the name through the White Sox. Different person. Anyways, that was off topic. But this is we heard possibly a serious challenge, and now there's a lot of money here. What's going on?
Yeah, so Terri Bryant's primary challenger has reported donations totaling $201,000 today. Last filing quarter, Senator Bryant filed with $108,000. She's filed quite a bit of A1, so we'll see if she's able to close the gap. But it looks like he's going to have the funding necessary to make this a competitive race.
Yeah, and what's not reported with that $201,000 is that was from, I think, Mommy and Daddy, right?
It was all from his family members, correct?
Yeah, so ultimately, I'm just going to my parents going, hey, if I run for office, you guys got $201,000 for me? I mean,
nice, yeah.
that's pretty nice. But this is all over with the gas tax vote that Terri Bryant made forever ago, it seems like. That they're just, Terri Bryant's a reliable, solid, rock-solid conservative down in Springfield, and yet she's getting challenged in the primary, which is what we're seeing a lot in Michael's region, where we're seeing this happen a lot, where solid conservatives are getting challenged in their primaries, which is frustrating.
We don't have enough time for me to go on that rant, so we can move on to our next
All
update.
right, we'll cover it in depth next week, but I'm sure Michael's going to have some thoughts. Last couple things here. Let's give another update on Senate District 53. Tom Bennett is retiring. We already know of 3 candidates who have announced: Chris Balkema, Paul Ducat, and Mike Kirkton. Now the mayor of the city of Washington, Gary Manier, I might be saying that wrong, has announced that he's now running. So we have our 4th candidate in that primary. So as we predicted, we said it was going to be a full primary. It's looking like that already. We got 4 candidates. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, this is going to be a crowded primary. Goes back to that geography theme I've been hitting on the past couple weeks. Are these candidates from Grundy County, Tazewell County, or other portions of the district able to expand outside of their geographic base? If you're going to win these crowded primaries, you have to do so.
Yeah, and the one's got a base in Iroquois County. They each have their geographical base. It's not going to be enough, though, to get the win. They're going to have to expand beyond it.
I do want to say that county does go into Will County. It has like 1.5 precincts, so it's a little closer to where we're at right now.
All right, there you go. It's got a colloquial tie. Last 3 things. Tosi Ufodike has a primary competitor, it seems, coming up. We don't know for officially, but we're starting to hear rumors in House District 51, which is one of our best pickup opportunities in the whole state. And now it looks like we might have a primary. What are you hearing?
Yeah, so no one's officially announced yet. I've heard some rumblings just in smoke-filled rooms, not too dissimilar from this one, but someone maybe out of Vernon Township might be trying to primary her. We don't know yet. I'm surprised there's not more people in this primary because this is a seat that Republicans can win and frankly should have never lost. No names have come out yet, but some people are trying to find another candidate. We don't know why, but we'll report on that soon.
Yeah, it is interesting. Obviously the House Republicans have gotten all in with Tosi. They were involved with her announcement. They were there at her big fundraiser. They're running her campaign at this point. And so it's going to be interesting to see if another candidate comes in. Now that whole fight comes up where the party's taking sides in a primary. I think it's a primary they'd love to avoid, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Matt's going to keep us posted there. All right, second to last update. House District 79 a Democrat has popped up in that race against Jackie Haas. We announced that Geneva Walters was going to be running in that district against Jackie Haas. Well, now another candidate, Billy Morgan, who's an old Pat Quinn farmhand, is running in that district. So it looks like there's going to be a Democratic primary in that race. It's an R7 district. Jackie Haas has done a great job in that district, but Democrats have been targeting it. But it doesn't, from what I saw, Walters was their favorite. Now it looks like she's not going to have a clear path in that primary.
Well, Billy's a Will County guy. I believe he's a member of the Will County Young Democrats, and they kind of control the Will County Democratic campaigns in this county. So I presume a lot of the Will County people are going to be backing him. I think Natalie Manley already endorsed him, so
He claims to have union endorsements that we haven't seen it officially yet.
Yeah, this is what people always do. They say the endorsements are coming, just wait, guys, and then we have to wait like a month because they haven't called anybody yet. We'll see what happens there. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Judy.
So Billy Morgan actually lives in Monee,
Okay.
and so I'm going to be actively working in Monee. It was my old district. I hope to gain, keep her support there. He is somebody who has caused a lot of trouble, the typical Democrats slamming stuff that they do. He's behind a lot of that. And so I think if people get to meet him, they see who he is. He's right now doing the fake thing. I'm a historical society. I've joined this and I've that. And I'm a really nice guy, so vote for me.
Yeah.
But in reality, he's not. He's just part of the total Democrat machine. It's part of the machine that runs out of the county executive's office. They're trying to replace people on boards and everything.
Interesting.
So I've been able to push back on some of that as well. Because right now she doesn't want to have any bad press. So we got Chuck Mayer and bad press is coming.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Last update on the campaign side. House District 70. Jeff Keicher has pulled the Democratic opponent. It looks like Randi Olson. It's a solid Republican district, but it's an update. So, and I know you know Jeff pretty well. What are you hearing about that race, Jen?
Yeah, well, Jeff's one of the best campaigners in the House Republican caucus. This is a Trump +3 district, but Jeff has always done a really great job of distinguishing himself from everything that's going on, running on his record of what he's done for his district. So, Randi Olson is a Cortland trustee, but she's going to have a really uphill battle because in her announcement press release, she already started floating out some of those really progressive buzzwords, and that's just not a progressive district. So, she's really going to have to change her tune if she wants to have a slim shot.
Yeah. All right, well, we've had some great conversations. As a result, we have gotten through half of our agenda. We wanted to talk about some of the presidential stuff, the UAW strike and how Republicans are taking advantage of that. Trump's going to Michigan. We got some national stuff we want to talk about. But we got a lot of anxious people in the room who just want to have some fun, and we are over our hour. So I want to close with this. You mentioned earlier you might have a little funny story about your desk.
Oh, my desk.
Close with a fun story.
So when I get the chair position, then the county executive is extremely angry at Denise who leaves the room. So because she was the president of NACO, she had an office in the supervisor assessment, she takes it away. I find out about it in the hall. I'm like, all right, she's a county board member. She's my responsibility. You don't get to take away her office without telling me, and I find out in the hallway. So I gave her an office because she's the president of NACO. So now there's no office for me. So I keep pounding her. I said, when am I getting an office? She goes, well, I'll tell you, there are no offices. There's no offices, walk back an area, there's offices here and there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's suddenly busy, suddenly is.
Yeah.
So she says to me, she says, well, there's two offices. One is in the basement, or there's a broom closet. So my staff didn't want me in the basement, so they put together this, it's like a little mobile desk. It's got two shelves in it, and my backpack goes here because I have to keep everything in a backpack. Actually, now I have a backpack that I put on my back and a rolling one because my desk is growing, and my purse, and then they put my name on it, and I can roll that thing around.
Do you have a mobile desk?
I have a mobile desk.
As a female, I'm very impressed that you've been able to put so many items on a rolling desk. Like, that's,
I
that's
just
an achievement.
I just love the gumption. You're not going to
Yeah.
give me a desk? Fine, I'll make one myself.
Make a desk.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's a lot of fun. All right, well, special thanks to Judy Ogalla. Thank you for joining us. This has been awesome. A lot of insight into Will County. As we do this, we try to get to different counties because I feel like one of the things we can do to help Republicans around the state is recognize how big the state is and how every county is unique. We can learn from each other. We were in Springfield last month. We were up in Lake County a couple months ago. We'll be in Schaumburg next month. So we like to hop around and give people that perspective from the local area. We've got people in the room who are all from Will County, so we're going to have some fun together. Special thanks to my political team, Chris, Abby, Matt, and John, who are here. Our producer, Lane Davis, who does all the work behind the scenes. Thank you to Lane. I'm Colin Corbett. We'd love to see you next month in Schaumburg. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back in your inbox in 1 week.